Is there a science of happiness?
I think that there is a growing science of happiness, and I think one of the things that we've learned about happiness from the kind of work that we've been talking about is that it is best to think of happiness as a skill. We normally don't think of happiness as a skill, but in fact, all of this kind of work would lead us to view it in this kind of way, and that if we practice it, we'll actually get better at it. One of the fascinating research areas that bears on these questions is work looking at the origins of certain kind of virtuous qualities, like being kind toward others, which turns out to be one of the strongest stimuli or situations which produces happiness in oneself. And it turns out that young infants have an innate propensity to express that kind of kindness toward others. They prefer watching those kinds of interactions. They prefer engaging in those kinds of interactions. And then stuff happens which mucks it up. In some sense, we can think of these qualities in the same way that we think of language. Language is clearly an innate capacity. All of us have the capacity for language, but in order for language to be expressed, we need to be raised in a linguistic community. And in order for happiness and for well-being and for other qualities like kindness and compassion to be expressed, we need to have it nurtured from early on. And if it's not nurtured, we can then use some of the practices that we're talking about to help familiarize ourselves with that place within each of us, which is there from the beginning, which has this as its core. And so I think these are some of the insights that we have been gleaning. And of course, there's a whole neurobiology to this that we've been learning as well, and that when people engage in these kinds of practices to strengthen these emotional attributes, there are changes that occur in the brain. And finally, let me just end this little riff by saying, we also know that happiness is related to health. And again, these data by now are really, really compelling. There's a group in the UK that has been working with it's called the Whitehall study, and it's a study of civil servants in British society, very large sample. And there are recent data from that study that clearly indicate that people's reports of their happiness are a strong predictor of all kinds of physical health outcomes. What we don't know is what the mechanisms for that are. But what we do know that there is some relationship, a positive relationship between happiness and health.
John?
I think there's one very important sort of take-home message from what Richie is saying. If you heard him say that happiness is a skill. Okay, so what that means, because we don't think of it as a skill, what do we think of it as? We think of it as a special state that I get to. And I think it's really important to recognize that happiness is not a single state. And mindfulness is not a single state either, nor is compassion. There are a whole range of different ways of being inside or under the umbrella of those kinds of things. And if you're hoping to actually increase your level of happiness, there are very unfortunate ways to go about it, where you're trying to basically grab for something that's going to make you happy, instead of recognizing that your happiness may actually already be here inside of yourself in the same way that your breath is, but you've never given it any attention, so it's a little bit atrophied. And as you, I mean, I'm sure that's, you know, within 30 seconds, if you held your breath, and then you took the next in-breath would be a source of very, very great happiness. But we take hugely for granted that, you know, that who would be happy with the breath, you know? But as soon as you can't breathe, it's the only thing you care about. So there are a lot of different things like that. And very often it's that we're ignoring, we're not attending to those aspects of our own affective experience that actually supply meaning, supply deep connection, supply just that kind of sense of interconnectedness that truly lies at the bottom of well-being and happiness.